Alright guys, so if you watched my last video and you selected the bloodstone and the rainbow moonstone, you were correct. Those are the two stones I decided to go with, because I just thought the shape and size of them went together really nicely for this double stone pendant that I wanted to show you guys. So if you want to see how to make this design, just keep watching. Alright, so first I'm going to measure the stones for you, and you don't have to use exactly the same stone measurements. Just what I like to do when making two stone pendants is I just kind of see how these two stones go together with each other, that one doesn't look, you know, too big. Like this top one, this little round moonstone, if it was bigger, it might kind of be too big. So just as long as you think it's a nice pairing, that's really all that matters. And in this case, obviously these shapes would work best in the in the same style of pendant that I'm making. So the round one is about 15 millimeters, and the teardrop is about 30 millimeters. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna grab my wire here. So for this pendant, since it's going to be bigger, I'm actually going to use a little bit of a thicker wire, since we have two stones, which will make it a little taller than, you know, something small. I want it to be nice and sturdy, so I have 19 gauge square copper wire from riogrande.com. I'm going to cut 3 pieces. Alright, so these are actually different length because I need one of the wires to be a little bit extra long. So the length of these are 2 pieces at 12 inches and a third piece at 17 inches. All right, so now I'm going to put them in such a way so that the longer piece is kind of centered, if you know what I mean. Like it's not like all here on one side or something. It's like a little bit of it hangs extra on this side, a little bit hangs extra on this side. So I try to kind of center it, if you know what I mean. And the way that I want them to be positioned is that the longer piece is going to be first, and then it's going to be followed by the other 2 pieces. Okay, so once you have that centered and lined up so that the longest piece is first, I'm going to take half round wire from Rio Grande. This is 22 gauge half round wire. And it's all dead soft copper, just solid copper. And then I'm gonna just take a piece of it. This is just coming off of the spool, so you don't have to measure and cut anything. And just wrapping this around a few times, just until I have a nice strong connection there. Because this is gonna be the very bottom of my pendant, and I'm gonna be bending this so that the bottom of the teardrop, the point of the teardrop, will be sitting there. So once I have that, I just cut the little wire ends so that they end up being on the same side here. And then we're just gonna smush those little wire ends down. And the side that your wire ends are on, that's going to be the inside that's going to be touching the stone, so that your wire ends are hidden. And you just want to make sure that this is in the middle of your wires. If it's not, you can kind of slide it down. Actually, it might have been easier to slide it down before you squished down everything. But just make sure it's in the middle. And then the front of your pendant is going to be this longest wire. So make sure the longest wire is in the front. This is the inside that's going to touch the stone. So the inside is pointing upwards. Then I'm gonna put my pliers in the middle of that little wrap that I made, and I'm gonna bend it into a little angle shape so that the bottom of my stone can sit in there, since it's a teardrop shaped stone. Okay, so we have this now. All right, and you can take your stone and you can put it in there like that to see that it fits good. And then these wires are just going to be coming up the side of your stone. Let me see if I can film. This is much easier, especially with the two stones, to do on like a flat surface. So I'm going to try to film this on a flat surface. I just want to show you, it's just really hard to do in the air. But what you want to do is on a flat surface, you want to have both of these stones. See how this is uneven, obviously, so you want to find like a nice evenness to it. What I like to do is I just like to start to bend these wires kind of outwards a little bit. That makes it a little easier as well. So that's how you get your shape. And then you just put a bend. You can use your pliers or your fingers, and you want to put a bend up here like this, so that now you have your frame of your wire. And you can reinforce this with your pliers if you want. Reinforce that little bend, or just with your fingers. All right, so now we're back to vertical position here. I'm just reinforcing that little bend a little with my pliers. I want these to all nicely line up, all the wires. So all 6 wires, 3 on top of 3. And then we're gonna take our half round wire. Again, just keep it on the spool. You don't need to, I never measure and like pre-cut pieces of it. So we're gonna wrap it around once they're nice, 3 on top of 3, nicely lined up. We're gonna wrap this wire around like this. And then little end, so we're gonna keep going this way, but first we're just gonna finish off the little end here. So I'm gonna take the little end, pull it through, so it's going, through here. I'm just gonna pull on it a little bit, pull, pull, pull. I'm just gonna push it in there, and then I'm just gonna trim that off. All right, and now these 2 longest wires that we talked about being in the front, here they are. I'm just going to press that down a little bit. There we go. I'm going to push those wires forward and out of the way. And I'm going to separate the next 2 sets of wires. So we have our longest frontmost wires, middle wires coming up, the 2 back wires right there. Okay? So the middle wires are going to be our bail. So what I'm going to do with this wire is I'm going to wrap it around and then keep going, and now I'm wrapping around just the middle wires and not all 6 wires. So you're going to wrap this way for a little bit until this is tall enough, to be bent into a bail shape. And while I'm doing that and making the bail, I thought I would take this time to answer a question that I get a lot, and that is, can I do this with round wires? And the short answer is yes. However, I find it much more difficult to work with round wires. They're just a lot more slippery. They don't hold the stones as well as the square wires because they have those edges the square wires do. And so I really think it's worth getting square wire, even though I know it's a little more difficult. Like, you have to order it online rather than in store. But if you do use round wire, you can't use, like I'm using 22 gauge half round. And the reason it's so thin and flexible is because if you take a 22 gauge round wire and you cut it in half, that's basically, you get this. So it's much thinner and more flexible. So if you just take a 22 gauge round wire, it's going to be much thicker and harder to bend. So if you're going to use round wires, then I suggest you do like a 26 gauge round wire to do this wraparound. So I've trimmed it. Again, this is our front. The little wire end is going to be here on the back of our bail. And I'm just going to squish that down like this. Now, these wires are extra, so theoretically, if you know you don't want to waste wire, you're working with maybe silver or an expensive wire, you could have also cut this back wire a little shorter, because we're going to have a little excess here. So what I'm going to do is I'm grabbing it and pinching it with my pliers, and I'm just bending it down. The reason I'm doing that is so I get this nice sharp bend down. If you just bend it down, it's going to be like a little circle with a gap there. So that's why I use my pliers to do that. And then I'm just going to cut that off just like that. And then this little bit that's still there, I'm just going to press that down with my pliers like that. Okay, so this is the back. All right, so here's what we're gonna do now. You wanna grab a cloth or just some sort of fabric that is, the purpose of this is to prevent scratching your wire. And I'm gonna use this in 1 second. This is a polishing cloth, that's why it's so dirty. So first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna put a bend into these front wires so that they're bending forward. Just kind of gently and carefully with your pliers. I'm trying to keep, since this is square wire, trying to keep that flat side of it facing forward. Now I'm just gonna kind of bring them a little bit closer together. Okay. I think I just need to turn this one a little more so that the flat side of it is facing forward. Okay. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna put the cloth on here. Let me hold it sideways so you can kind of see. We're gonna squish it down, but the cloth is blocking the visibility, but it's also protecting it so that you're not putting marks in it right now when you're squishing it down. And now we're just gonna bring that together. And you can do it again. Sometimes it helps to do it, kind of focus on each side. So you have each side being flattened at a time. There we go. Now this might have discombobulated the rest here, so you might want to just kind of press over these wrappings here just to put everything back in place. And then again, we're just gonna squish those together this way. All right, so the goal of this was really just to have this coming down like this, like you see here. And now I'm gonna separate them out. So maybe the easiest way to do this is just to hold up here with your pliers and then separate it out like this. All right, so now with our bail. We're going to bend it forward a little bit. We're going to curve it, so we're shaping it in the size of the bail. And then we're going to bring through the wires through. Alright, so here's my little loop of the bail. Here's the wires coming through the front. So we're going to have one of the wires and then the other of the wires on each side. Just bring them around. We don't need the cloth anymore. Bring them around like this. Squish down a little bit. If you can get in there. These the tools are linked underneath my video. These are Xuron needle nose pliers, or tweezer nose pliers. And I got them on Amazon. And I think they're really handy for getting into tight little locations. So now we're going to trim here in the back and leave ourselves a little end so we can tug that in. Okay, so here we are in the back. We're going to take each one of these little wire ends and we're going to tuck that inwards. And then we're going to press that down to hide it away, basically, so that it's not sticking out, the little wire end. Let's tuck that one away. All right. Squish that in there. All right, so nothing on the back that's sharp. All the ends are tucked away. Here it is from the front. So what we're gonna do now, sorry, hit my camera with these wires, is we are going to crisscross these with each other. So switch positions of your wires, just like this. And now that they're on opposite ends, what you're gonna do is, the easiest for me is if I put my thumb here, just like this. And then I bend the wire, because my thumb is preventing it from, like it's curving it almost, on each side. So now we have this kind of thing going on here. Okay, so what I'm gonna do now is you wanna line up that wire with these 3 wires here on both sides. You want that to happen. And you're gonna take, let me grab my half round wire here. You're gonna take your half round wire and you're gonna connect. You're gonna make a connection there. So we're gonna wrap 3 times. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. So that you have 3 little wraps just like that. And then you're gonna trim the end of your half round wire in such a way that the little wire ends of it are on the inside here so that you can't see them, they're out of the way. And then you're gonna press them down, press the whole thing down, all those little wraps. So here is what that looks like. Just pushing it up a little bit because there we go. All right, now the same thing on this other side. So we're just gonna make 3 little wraps. Try to keep it tight though. You don't want a gap between the wires. Okay, my wire got a little twisted there. All right, so we got our 3 little wraps. Just gonna trim and trim. And then we're just going to press down the little ends inside of the frame there. And look how much lower that one is. We have to push this one up a lot. There we go. Is that even yet? There. That looks even. Squish it again. Now we're going to cross this again. So now we're crossing, and you can finally see what's happening here. You can see the formation of that little circle up front that's going to hold our stone in place. So let me grab my stones, starting with the bloodstone. So the first thing I'm going to do is it's not going to completely lock it in place until both stones are in, but I'm going to start locking things in place. So I'm holding it tight right now because otherwise it just comes right out. So I'm putting it in the frame and I'm just holding it there with my fingers, and then I'm taking my plier and I'm putting it here underneath the very front wire, and this is just the basics of like how I always secure stones. So you've probably seen this a lot, but just where we make the bend like this, and it pushes the wire onto the stone, and now the stone can't pop out the front. So then we're going to do that on the other side as well. All right. And then on the back, we're not going to do too much on the back. You can just put the wire onto the stone like a little bit, because the thing is we have to put the other stone in as well. Okay, so now it's a little easier because now at least you don't have to hold this bloodstone in place. Now we're going to put in this little round stone. So I am just turning it to see how to best position it, because with a stone like a moonstone that has a shine to it, you have to position it so that you can see the shine from it best. So what I'm going to do now, so I'm kind of pushing it in. You can see, there we go. Now it's being pushed in more. I'm going to take this backmost wire with my pliers. I'm just going to pull it and bend it onto the stone. Okay, so do you see that? It's going onto my little moonstone. So I'm going to do that in both. Ooh, sorry about that. My pliers slipped and then hit the camera. All right, I'm going to do that in both sides here. Both sides. There we go. All right. So I wouldn't say that the stone is like super duper secure now, because the top of it. All right, so here in the front, since this little round frame is keeping your stone in, you just have to bend it in such a way that that your stone won't pop out of it. So see how it's kind of going here along the edge? It's not too big. You don't open it so big that the stone can come out. Obviously it's still moving because we haven't secured these little ends. But yeah, the purpose of it is just to trap the front of your stone. And then here, this is kind of going onto the stone as well. So this, since it's a cabochon, the back of it is bigger, so it can't pop out the front either. All right. So now is where you kind of play around with it and try to get it to be all nice and even and symmetrical and all that. All right, so what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna, like, once it's all nice and even and equal, I'm gonna take this wire and we're gonna put it through. So it's going around through that gap there. And so it's coming out on top, not underneath itself, but above itself like this. So we're just going to slowly and carefully push it through with your pliers. Until it's all the way through, and you can just squish it like this. And also this way as well. Okay. So as you can see, the wire's coming here, and then it's going around, and I've squished it flat. So from the front, it now looks flat. So then you're just going to do the same thing here on this other side. So again, from the back, and it's only these two wires, because remember the backmost wire, here it is here. It's no longer there, so it's just these two wires that it's wrapping around here on the side. So just kind of gently and slowly, don't pull on it, because that's going to just make it all wacky. I like to just carefully and gently bend it with my pliers. Does that look even? Yeah, that looks even. So basically the same exact thing here. Squishing it flat, and now also squishing it this way. All right, so now we have these two wires sticking out here on the back, and from the front is pretty much finished. Let me just adjust this little wrap here so it's a little more even. There we go. So the front's pretty much finished. Our stones are all secure in there. Now we're just going to finish out the back. Now, the reason I brought this wire to the back and I didn't just trim it off is because, as you can see, this little round stone is being held here pretty well, but see, the top of it is really just completely open here. And theoretically, I mean, it'd be pretty hard to push it out, but I just want to secure it a little more. Just a little extra security there. So I'm just going to cross these wires just like this on the back. Okay. And then here on the front, I'm bending them. They're basically going to go into this little gap here. Let me show you. See this gap up here? And on the other side, they're going to go through that gap. So I'm just bending them. And then I am trimming them, but I'm leaving myself a nice little end here, like a decent size little end, because that little end has to be bent and has to go all the way in that little gap. So you don't want it to be too small so that you won't be able to tuck it in there. So we're taking that little end, we're bending it into the hole, bend that in there, and then with your pliers, this really helps to have these really skinny little pliers. We're just going to get in there and squish it just like that. And then same thing here on this side. We're just pushing that in there. There we go. It's pushed in there, and with your pliers, just get in there and squish that down. All right. So now, that is actually pretty much it. You can kind of take one final look, make sure everything looks nice and equal and even. My bail's not crooked. But what you have here is you have the two stones visible from the front. And then on the back, they are secured as well. And if it bothers you, see how you can kind of see this wire coming through here a tiny bit? You can kind of mess around with it as well. Or maybe you want it to be more visible, you want to put like a bend in it. It's up to you, what you prefer. And then for these wires as well, if you bring them a little closer together, you won't be able to see them as much from the front. All right. I think that is all nice and even now. Yeah. All right, so that is it. That is, my hands got really dirty. That is this double stone pendant. Actually, let me hold it like this, I think you can see it better. That is our double stone pendant with this nice little bloodstone and this rainbow moonstone. So that is it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you're ever interested in purchasing any of my jewelry, I do sell it on my website, oxanacrafts.com, which I will link down below. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.